Hey gang, Shane Patrick White here, and welcome to Beyond the Process. Today I'm trying my hand at inking comic book legend John Buscema. Now, John is one of my favorite artists from the early days of Marvel. His work on the Avengers and Conan the Barbarian is some of the best and most action-packed out there. And one of my favorite inkers for John is Tom Palmer. Now, if you know anything about John's work, his comic book stuff is very gestural. But I was lucky enough to find something that was a little bit tighter. It's a Tarzan piece, which I think might have been a pinup, but I don't know. I don't think it was ever published. So I'm going to try to emulate Tom Palmer over John Buscema. So it's kind of a 2-for-1, you know? But if you'd like to see how that turns out, sit back, relax, and enjoy the process. Try and find the highest quality pencils available off the internet. That way, when printing a Blueline, it will ensure that you have all the information needed to do the most accurate work. I was lucky enough to find this Tarzan page that was large enough to do the trick. Not only will it print well, but I'll be able to reference it on my nearby iPad while inking. But wait, what's a Blueline? And more importantly, how do I make one? In Photoshop, open up the pencil file you want to change to a Blueline. Next, click Image, then Mode in the drop-down menu. And click Duotone. In the box labeled Type, make sure Monotone is selected. A single color choice should be available for you to select under Ink number 1. Under HSB, I have the numbers 203, 25, and 100 selected respectively, though mostly any range around the color blue should work. I chose a lighter blue because I wanted to print lighter. Your printer may vary, so adjust accordingly. For this example, I made it darker so you can see how the monotone works. Next, set the image size for printing. I usually select 600 dpi at 11 by 17. It's a fairly standard comic size. By selecting Ctrl or Command P for printing, I set up the image for my printer, which is an outmoded, obsolete, but excellent Epson Stylus Photo 2200. I make sure the correct paper type is selected and that it's the correct size. I typically print on smooth 500 series Strathmore 2-ply Bristol paper. If you've seen my other inking videos, I'm a big fan of Speedball Super Black ink. I'm also using the larger Winsor & Newton Series 7 No. 3 watercolor brush. So here we go. As per my usual, I start inking in an area that is less critical. The tree and vine are organic and offer an opportunity to try out a combination of short feathering strokes, blunt black fills, and more calligraphic brushwork. I really enjoy inking organic material as there isn't a lot of pressure in terms of accuracy outside of light and shadow. As evidenced by this foliage, John Buscema is a master of gesture, but it puts all the pressure on the inker to interpret it in his style of what the final result should look like. I keep in mind the palm trees I've seen on my travels abroad to places like Thailand and Costa Rica. Trees especially have been a favorite of mine as well. Having a mental library of plants is very helpful when it comes to figuring out things on the fly. One can build their mental library by looking through and sketching from lots of books on varying subjects, or, better yet, using brush and ink to sketch from life. Any opportunity I have to travel, my wife and I seek out botanical gardens so that we can see the local flora. This is another great way to build up my reference library. When emulating the inking style of Tom Palmer, it's important to keep in mind his illustrative feathering, overall line weight, and spotting of blacks to balance out the page. While I have read several of the early Tarzan novels, I haven't spent a lot of time illustrating the character. But what I do know about the character is that he lives in a violent jungle world where he has communed and befriended its native animals. Those who are not as friendly may end up as a leopard loincloth. You may see throughout the inking of this piece that I will roll my brush in heavily shadowed sections. This helps with spotting blacks and keeps me from wasting ink while creating a point with my brush. I do this just before I tackle feathering or pulling long contour lines. Feathering is an inker's way of defining light and shadow, giving elements volume. The length of the feathering can say a lot about how the light is working across the form. Short feathering may suggest brighter light, while longer feathering, dimmer light. Comics from the 20th century tended to use longer, more illustrative feathering, while 21st century comics use barely any feathering at all. Though sometimes styles are cyclical and they may come back around again and again. The reason for this is sometimes the story is set in a time and place, and people want to evoke that era. Since comics is largely a nostalgic medium, it's good for an inker to try inking pencilers from every era of comics. When inking grass or foliage, sometimes inking the negative space is just as powerful as inking the object itself. For the base of this tree, I let the shadow of the tree define the shape of the grass, letting it be white while grounding the tree in the environment. By the time I got to inking Tarzan's torso, I was feeling more confident. I felt like I was able to scratch in the feathering with more of a sketch quality and less tedium and overall care that might have made it feel too slick and stiff. You can also see that I took a moment to reinforce the drawing for the hand and monkey on Tarzan's shoulder. In some cases, that's necessary to make sure you know where you're heading. If this had been John Buscema's other comic pages, I would have had to do that for the entire page. Something I'm not sure I'm ready to do just yet. Inking details doesn't always have to be literal, especially in areas that are not the main focus. Remember, we're trying to convince the viewer of something. Every object is a supporting character to the focus of the page. And of course, the focus of the page is Tarzan. Too much detail added throughout can be tiring to the eyes. Granted, some artists have made favorable counterpoints to this argument, but for our purposes and the purposes of learning, let's stick with the basic principles. When simplifying shapes, keep a couple of things in mind. Provide a thick enough framework to identify the object, and add just enough detail to help us understand what it is. Working on plants is good practice, as well as objects on a desk or shelf. In this case, it helps you learn how to separate things and keep focus. One thing I really love about Buscema's work is the power of his figures. Even when they're just standing still and not in some dynamic pose, of which he is known for. This arm, for instance, is a great example of his command of human anatomy. Years ago, I had the good fortune of filming John Buscema for the Frazetta Painting with Fire documentary. As I was filming him, he did a sketch for Frank Frazetta in a sketchbook we were putting together. He started sketching a hand, and within seconds it became Conan. Everything was in proportion and had that signature strength that came from decades of drawing. John inherently understood what made each character unique. While he was famous for illustrating Conan, his Tarzan was equally powerful and regal in other ways. My hope is that my inks did not detract from that in the least. Eyes and hands are the first elements we focus on in any picture that have people in them. It's part of our evolution as humans to read the emotion of a person through their eyes and whether or not they have a weapon in their hand. Somehow, this has extended to art. If the eyes, hands, and even feet are wrong, the viewer will have a problem enjoying the piece overall. But wait, there's more. When it comes to scanning, I use my ancient 8.5 by 14 inch Epson Expression 1280 scanner to scan all my comic art. Because of the large paper, I have to scan it in 3 sections. The reason for that is that I have enough overlap for when I merge all 3 images together. In Photoshop, I go to File, Import, and click WIA Support. Please note your scanning software may vary here. I typically scan work like this as a bitmap, pure black and white image at 1200 dpi. I've done it this way for most of my projects. Once all 3 sections are scanned, I go to File, Automatic, and click Photo Merge. The Photo Merge window comes up. On the left side under Layout, I select the Reposition option. Blend images together should be selected at the bottom, and then click OK. It takes a little while for Photoshop to assemble everything, so be patient until you see all 3 layers oriented and the full-size image. Each layer will have a mask layer. I then collapse everything by hitting Ctrl or Command E. I then duplicate the layer by hitting Ctrl or Command J and fill the bottom layer with white to make sure all the edges are solid before collapsing everything again. From there, I'll clean up any details and then save it in the file format and size I need. And that should do it. Hopefully that helps. Good luck with your own work. Thanks again for joining me today. If you found any value in this, hit the like button. Better yet, subscribe or tell a friend. Until next time, thanks for watching.